Hello and welcome to the Asian American Forward podcast. Today, Don is joining us again from New York City, as we can see from the beautiful background. Good morning, Don.
Good morning, Katie. Good morning,
It is still morning for you, right?
Yeah, it's morning, but I have finished one assignment already. Travel like 2 hours in Manhattan areas and coming back to the New Jersey and for this podcast.
Busy. And it's really getting to be crunch time for you for the campaign. So thank you for continuing to make time for our weekly conversations. I always enjoy it.
It's a pleasure for me to talk to you every time with uncertainty before the program, and we can talk anything. We don't have a rehearsal, just pick up a subject, we can talk about it. And I enjoy it. This is our bread and butter business.
And so we today are talking about, you're in full campaign mode. So we wanted to talk today about political scandals, particularly sex scandals in politics. That's just kind of an issue that has continued to come up throughout history, but particularly in the last few years since we saw the Me Too movement, which started in roughly 2018. So just a little bit of background for our listeners in case they aren't familiar with Me Too. So it largely started as like a series of women coming forward against generally workplace sexual abuse and assault, particularly in the entertainment industry. So the highest profile case there, right, is the Harvey Weinstein, who was a big film producer. And so the general trend, though, is that these kinds of scandals tend to happen in high pressure, high power differential workplaces. So which makes politics another one of those careers where there are a lot of high profile scandals. Recently, we've had Governor Cuomo of New York has had one or two scandals. More than that?
Yeah. You're
following it more closely than me, I'm sure. And I can also list a handful of like workplace scandals that have happened in, not all of them sexual assault, but that have happened in like media and podcasting in the last year. But we won't get into that. So I wanted to just like get all of our cards out on the table at the beginning and talk about what's kind of your experience been. You've been in politics for a long time. So how have you sort of like engaged with these kinds of scandals? What's been your role? And like, have you noticed changes? Has your perspective changed over the years?
Yeah, I think it's a political scandal, especially sex scandal, has been hanging around for all politicians. It's just like a sword over their head for a long time. Almost every famous politician have some kind of a relationship related to the sexual scandal. That's quite a tragedy. And in my mind, the first sex scandal is from the House Speaker Newt Gingrich, and then it's coming after is Bill Clinton, and then it's from it's almost from recently it's Cuomo, and then it's now it's in the New York City. It's a candidate. There have some other people. It's just got a lot of allegation, especially for the Supreme Court. You just mentioned 2018 nomination for the Justice Brand. What's the last name?
Kavanaugh.
It's the Brett Kavanaugh is the scandal and allegation. And also that one, because I do have a legal background, so it's every Supreme Court nomination is all my interest. So I watched it from Justice Thomas the case too.
Right.
This is the two comparison. Thomas the case is have a much more graphic description of how Thomas has did for the woman, but for the Kavanaugh, it's just like a hearsay description, but looks like a high school kid. Some have a fun time, or it's a little bit over drink. That's kind of things over 20, 30 years. That's the pretty remote allegation. So for that part, you can see this kind of a political lies of sexual assault or harassment. Those kind of things is my personal opinion. But in overall, Democratic Party, or it's a liberal or progressive, has taken this pretty serious. Me Too movement actually is, I think it's they have a deep roots of in this society, because men has a lot of power in every industry. They are taking the board position, they are CEO, so it's pretty easy to access and give the favor to whoever in exchange of a sexual favor. Those kind of things happen every day. The Me Too movement kind of bring up people's awareness of how deep and how far this society has gone that direction. So it's that's the topic I really want to listen to yours as a young female. It's a personal experience. For me, it's where originally in the past 10 years, my thinking has been a little bit of shift. From very beginning, I said, oh, I hate the people take advantage of young girls, young women in the workplace. But now it's I'm a kind of a little bit tired of the allegation. It's a little bit over. I know it's some is the true, some is factually it's the no problem. It's this the problem exists, but overall now it's a medium cheese. This kind of a news and exaggerate some stories. I think it's maybe a little bit over the line. I think it's maybe some kind of a balance going to coming up very soon.
Well, it kind of like segues like really nicely into the next like thing I wanted to talk about, which is that there's kind of this fundamental tension at the center of all like sexual assault and even like abusive workplace type scandals that don't involve like sexual assault, just like other kind of abusive behavior. There's this kind of balance in between like justice and appropriate consequences and wanting to protect vulnerable people, whether that means like young women in workplaces who don't have as much power and maybe like taken advantage of. So we have to kind of balance like respect for victims of sexual assault with this kind of legal principle of innocent until proven guilty. And so I was wondering how you kind of like think through navigating those tensions.
Yeah, this is a very, very challenging question. From the spectrum, from very light the part to the criminal part, there's a whole different scenarios. You coming from touch your back, it's okay, hug, it's good, or just touch anybody's parts. Some people it's have a hug, but people doesn't want to be hugged. So those kind of things start from very beginning and then go to the verbal come in session, and then it's the say give some hint, or it's even invite a female colleague go to the lunch or dinner. Those kind of things is becoming the whole spectrum, and then it's give some hint, say it's that if you don't do this, I don't give you a job, I don't raise you, and until it's use of force or coercion to force people to do something. That's the whole spectrum. It's very, very challenging for the male, for the leader, for the senior people who has a control of the money and the position. Even in my daily life, I must still got the trouble. It's whatever it's even you want to make a friendship, they may got a different perception. So that's kind of a challenge for the all female or senior people. That's my concern at this moment. I don't know it's on your part, what's your opinion, but at least from my part, it's very, very challenging to cross the entire spectrum to make sure your every move in your workplace, in your relationship to the opposite sex, and it's pretty hard. Sometimes you want to show sincere friendship, and people in misinterpretation, or maybe you really like someone, but something is couldn't develop. That's those things that I really don't have exactly how to manage this relationship. It's so challenging for this country, especially in the political arena. It's just so challenging. You have to work very closely with your staff, but the most time your staff, supporting staff is a young female clerk level, and then you have to work very closely, like an hourly basis, even every minute just to get things done. Those kind of things make you pretty challenged to work with people.
Yeah, I mean, I think also you make a really good point about like each case is so different. Like there is a variety of like kind of even like when you were talking about Clarence Thomas versus sort of Brett Kavanaugh and the accusations against both of those men, both of whom did end up on the Supreme Court anyway, which I think is something to make note of, that the allegations, whether or not people believe they were true, didn't really stick to them in any way that kind of led to permanent consequences. You know, Kavanaugh's case was an accusation that was decades old. It was at a party. It wasn't a workplace. Like largely what we've been focused on is workplace abuse. It wasn't a workplace situation. It was just, you know, not just, because that sounds minimizing, but it was like more of a social situation. And it was a one-time event versus Clarence Thomas. I forget the name of the woman who accused him.
Nina or Tina, something like it. Yeah.
I might just have to Google it. But so that was like a workplace situation. And I think also what's really interesting is just looking at how differently, like just the public responded. Anita Hill, that's her name.
Yeah. Anita.
How differently the public responded to those allegations, even though it seems likely that the Anita Hill allegations were not that you can really rate these crimes in terms of seriousness, but like the allegations that Anita Hill was bringing forward were much more serious than what was brought against Brett Kavanaugh. And the way that she was treated in the hearings is completely different. Joe Biden was actually he was a member of the Judiciary Committee at that time, right? And was kind of responsible for cross-examining her, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I do think that there's a level at which we kind of have to consider each case like on its own merits and think about like everything on a situation by situation basis. And I think also you raise a really good point about like workplaces where you are really close. I've been watching binging a TV show on Apple TV called The Morning Show, which is loosely based on the Matt Lauer scandal at the Today Show. So Matt Lauer was a host, and it came out that he had kind of had several inappropriate sexual relationships, coercive with women on staffers on the Today Show, and he was fired. So it kind of follows a similar, Jennifer Aniston plays like a TV show, morning show host who, you know, wakes up one day and her co-host has been fired because of similar allegations. And she has to get up on the morning news and say, you know, my co-host has been fired for this reason. And so it kind of is examining sort of the aftermath for the people on the show, for the hosts. And so I think also I want to talk a little bit about like, this is sort of a concept of workplaces in general. Like, how can we make healthier environments that kind of don't lead to this sort of power differential, or even just the intensity of like, I'm curious if you see a way that we can like try to prevent these situations from even happening in the way that we structure our workplaces, or in the way that we think about like how campaigns, for example, are organized.
Yeah, at least for myself, also based on my experience, one side is how I personally make a political or ethnical judgment about the sexual scandal, or it's the view other people is the when we listen or is get news from media, someone got the exposure of the sexual scandal stories. In January is now I just want to cool down myself, calm down, don't do any response or is any comment until maybe 3 days, 4 days, 5 days later, with more aspect exposure to the media, and then it's we can see the things from more angle. It's sometimes it's a consent involved, sometimes it's the allegation is not true. Those kind of things is give you more rooms to make a judgment. And also I used to be try to set up a pretty high standard for the politician. Now it's probably it's after Trump. It's Trump have so many allegations and so truthful, a lot of facts there. But the people especially for this society, they accept whatever, even the have paid the money to the people to sell the story. Those kind of things that people start getting used to it. So it's for myself, it's kind of a, you cannot set up a too high standard for the politician. They are human beings. Sometimes it's happened, and especially there's a consensual relationship, and also as long as you're looking for his other part of work, and also public response now is doesn't impact their election result anymore, or not, at least not much, both locally and nationally. It's the people try to smear political opponent by digging their dirt and try to find their girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, ex-wife, and whatever the relationship, they try to go through the the relationship. Now it's don't have too much impact. And from this perspective, I'm a little bit linear or tolerant for the politician on this aspect. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but at least I have to honestly acknowledge my ethical standard on this part in kind of a dramatically drop. But at the meantime, for myself, I just try to keep working relationship separate from friendship. Always even go further. It's just very strictly just for yourself. That's the only choice. Just say, you cannot even see, hey, Katie, you're pretty or you're beautiful. Those kind of things is that I couldn't even say. I don't know what's the perception or reaction that people are going to respond. So it's for me, it's that I have to treat people very, very professionally instead of go to cross the friendship line.
So I'm curious. That's really interesting. I think you're right. It is. I hadn't really thought about the fact that, like at this point, if you think back to like the late 20th century kind of sex scandals, it would completely tank your political career. I mean, the Lewinsky scandal effectively ended Clinton's presidency. There were other things going on, I think, that like contributed to that. But I'm trying to remember, there was another guy who it was the consensual affair, and he was running for president in a primary, and I can't remember his name, but also it ended his political career. It was pre-Clinton by just a little bit. Anyway, my whole point is that so it's interesting that like we have so much more awareness of these scandals, but they tend to have less of an impact. But I wanted to also follow up on something that you said, which is that politicians are human beings. Yes, definitely agree. But do you think that as public servants, they should be held to a higher standard than the average kind of person?
Absolutely. That's part I didn't change. Any public figures or politicians, because they have a control of the public resources and they have a much power than private citizen. So on the ethnical standard, and because they touch public resource, so they have to maintain some much higher public trust. If he or she couldn't maintain the much higher faithful relationship to his or her family, to the existing relationship, and also it's to the public, just take advantage of his political power, and that kind of things he or she deserves some public criticize, or it's impeachment, or it's take away from his or her power. That's the for sure. That's the but we have to, as you mentioned before, guilty until proved, the innocent until proved guilty. That part is now is a little bit challenger, because the media is tend to just describe whatever the exposure of a scandal just by presumed that this guy is guilty. So that's very, very hard after sexual scandal story. Whatever the allegation exposed to the world, it's very hard to recover. That's why this still can be the most powerful weapon during the election season. That's why it's the New York City is going to be very, very intense in the next 50 days, and there's going to have a lot of a negative campaign, a lot of stories, even sex stories too.
Yeah, well, the court of public opinion definitely moves much more quickly than the actual court system.
Yeah.
I'm wondering also, I do want to ask, like, why you think these scandals tend to have less of an impact on election results these days.
Yeah, I want to repeat it, because everyone know Trump had did a lot of sex scandal. It's a lot of the girl's allegation, but he seems walked away freely without any impact to the his political career, or it's whatever the goal he won. So it's that standard gave some people almost universally reduce the people's the high bar, the lower the bar to everyone, the perception to the politician. It's overall, because they can say, do some comparison with Trump, with all the previous politicians. So it's people intend to have a much more tolerance, especially for the history and the historical, is the past like 10 years previous experience or sex scandal. And the more harmful impact is the sexual scandal or harassment during the immediately office, or it's the within the political power. Those kind of things still is very challenging. Just like Cuomo. Cuomo's current employee, his secretary, and his staffers, campaign PR person is all filed a complaint. Those kind of is very serious. That's why it's the people have some much more the anger or trust to him. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I think also there is something about like whether or not we're what the expectations of each individual who's accused, like how that affects them. Because I think in the case of Trump, I'm not sure it was exactly surprising for anyone that he has a lot of allegations against him. He's been in the public eye, for many decades, and kind of has a reputation of being a little bit of a sleazy guy. And so perhaps the allegations didn't stick to him as much, because that was part of his whole persona, was that, he was kind of untouchable and he could say or do whatever he wanted. And so, whereas if you have someone like, Joe Biden has had a few allegations against him that haven't really stuck, which I think is interesting, because for him, he's got kind of this sort of like affable grandpa kind of like persona. And so you would think that people would be more jarred by that. Do you have like an opinion about sort of the various scandals that have tried and failed to sort of take Joe Biden down?
Yeah, The one example you just mentioned with Joe Biden's sexual scandal, that's kind of things that you have to judge him by the whole content. The number one, he's very, very old already. And I don't he has any sexual desire from his personal experience, but just show friendship and maybe just take a little bit of advantage of the kiss people, touch people, those kind of things. But that's the compare with Trump. That's the real sexual relationship. Those kind of things is totally different. This is just on the very surface, and maybe make a couple of young ladies, girls, they feel uncomfortable. But the uncomfortable level didn't go through the sexual harassment that level yet. That's why it's the I lean to the more tolerant Joe Biden's any behavior, and also it's those kind of on the public picture, photo, video, those kind of things that people can judge. There's not too much content there, just a very close, intimate, 1 second, 2 second, the action. So I personally think that's the people acceptable.
So I'm also curious, like as a much younger person talking to an older person, like if you notice kind of generational gaps, even on the campaigns that you've worked on, by how people respond to these kinds of allegations.
So from my experience during the campaign, is our entire campaign team probably is like 70 people. And over 90% is the young generation, people like you, 20 to 30 age round. For the sexual harassment is the #1 priority in our campaign team to make sure it's we build a very positive culture within campaign. People treat each other with respect, with the kind of a professional relationship instead of developing, because the power within the campaign is a very, very dramatic, big. Because if you're a director on the one part, you are almost control $1 million budget and hire the people, fire the people very easily. And because the campaign team is not like a working environment, it's all people coming from different background and quickly assembling into one group to focus on elected one person. That means Andrew for us, but each other, we don't know too well each other before the campaign. So we have to quickly celebrate together. And the relationship, you need quickly to build a trust. But if you build the trust, somehow it's a friendship and outside working relationship, it can be developed. That's why our campaign team is a very, very careful and also put on the top priority to treat the young people, either you are male or female, with highest respect. For me, I'm pretty easygoing and just focus on my part of job and treat my assistant colleague with respect. And also, English is still my second language. So even I make a joke, I still don't know which joke is going to cross line or it's the improper. So I try to don't talk over the phone too much. If in person, I can talk, people can immediately respond to my feeling and my intention. But over the phone, in the Zoom, sometimes I just try to hesitate, don't make a joke at all.
Just out of curiosity, is the campaign mostly men or mostly women, or about half and half?
I think it's that we try to build a campaign culture to reflect New York City. So it's our campaigns. We have a campaign manager is the gay, and the campaign co-manager is a Indian American woman, and also it's the I think it's almost 1/3 is a woman for sure, and male female is pretty balanced, and also it's an ethnic group is pretty balanced. That's the kind of a culture we try to build the campaign team to reflect the New York City's reality, the demographically. That's pretty interesting because it's used to politician or campaign team is the most assembled by the white gay guys, the very powerful people, but now it's the changed already.
So I want to ask one last question before we wrap up, which is, we've been talking mostly about American politics, but I'm curious if how do sex scandals play out in China? Have they had sort of a Me Too type kind of movement in recent years there? Do you notice any similarities or differences that are worth talking about?
Yeah, I think it's the sex. It's a kind of a universal. It's the link to the politics, regardless either in America, in China, any country. As long as you have political power, there's always related to the sex, because on the one side, that's the human being, the nature. On the other side, there's a lot of younger women, they seeking for the political position, career. So they tend to around the powerful politician, and they can get a better treatment. But in China, it's the same thing. It's this kind of things happen. The only thing is different is Me Too movement in China is almost nothing. There's no such kind of things at all. But the only thing is the political opponent that use this kind of a sex scandal to secretly videotape those people on the political opponent and release to the public. And then if those kind of things happen, your political career is going to die. That's the only things I think either woman or female, they got sexual harassment, or it's the slavery, those kind of things is that you have to go through the media, go to the social media publicly. And also at the one side you go there, but the second condition, you have to have a political backup. You do it. Otherwise, if people in control, they can immediately sell all the media to sell the story. There's no way they can release to the public. So it's you end up with silence.
So it's a lot more like I guess informal maybe is not the right word, but like you won't see those sort of like massive kind of New York Times expose, obviously, right? Like Ronan Farrow has kind of made a career of like writing these sort of Me Too stories. I think he was with the New Yorker, but
no way. Yeah. There's in China. There's no way. It's generally it's a public or it's a media is still controlled by the one party, Communist Party, so they can pick and choose whatever the story they wanted. And most times the sexual scandal, either in the entertainment industry or in the political, position, the people, their politicians, they pick whatever they want to destroy. Always they destroyed already. They just list there is the crime, crime 1, crime 2 to the 10. And one of it must be the sex scandal for sure.
Is there a big difference in how the public responds to these kinds of allegations, or is it pretty similar?
No, different. It's because in China, people is used to whoever the political loser, there's always a list of a woman or list of a sex scandal there. So it's a public has used to it. They don't have too much response. And if they have a response, they don't have a platform to opinion themselves.
Well, very interesting to talk about this and kind of hear from your experience. We'll wrap it up there for this week. Don, thank you for joining me as usual.
Thank you, Katie. I don't know if whether opinion is the political correct or it's incorrect, but I just telling you from my personal political experience and observation and the change of myself. Hopefully the people either agree with me or not agree with me. I really don't care, but I just truly appreciate that we pick this topic so that we can go through ourselves.
Yeah, well, we will wrap it up there. My name is Katie Simpson. Our podcast is sponsored by Asian American Forward. You can visit our website at www.asianamericanforward.com. If you enjoyed the show this week or have a topic you'd like to hear us discuss on a future episode, send us your comments at info@asianamericanforward.com. We'd love to hear from you. You can also find us on Facebook and hear more conversations between Don and I at our YouTube channel. If you're a fan of the show, leave us a review in the Apple Podcast Store or tell someone about us. It really helps people find the show. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you. Bye.